just put them up very slowly, and then pause and switch it to half a second, okay?
Okay.
Okay, now hang on. So this is Levels of Selfhood Part 2, and we're at Chapter 3, but I wanted to do a couple things first. First, I wanted to show you a movie of this star. This star is just before Chapter 3. Yeah, you with me?
Yeah, I'll be there in a second.
Okay, so this star, David, you want to show us the whole star again? Just go, that one, yeah. Okay, this star is just before Chapter 3. All right, and this is, what this shows is the relationship between meditation and the self. And meditation is symbolized by the 8-pointed star. And what I mean by meditation, if you read Chapter 2a, is some intense activity that focuses on the self instead of on external life or on life outside the self. And what you're going to see here is a whole sea of 5-pointed stars with the 8-pointed star in the center. And, okay, so go back to the beginning and show the movie.
Or Peggy, it's right behind the pool there.
All right, now this is a 5-pointed star, and what you're going to see is a whole string of 5-pointed stars, and there's going to be 72 of them. And this is what a 360-pointed star looks like. This particular 360-pointed star. So why don't you make it about a half a second, David?
Okay.
You'll see all the 5-pointed stars come up. Okay.
3/4 of a second, okay?
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, and you see how this works? So the 5-pointed stars are drawn, and they're,
That's interesting.
all right, and there's gonna be 72 of them. And I've just colored them just sort of artistically. I'm not trying to say anything by the colors. It just turns out to be something very pretty. The 5-pointed star symbolizes self. And we're showing 72 of them here. If you counted them, you see there's 72. If you had to draw it, you'd have to count them. Okay? And now we're going to get the 8-pointed star that's going to pop up right there. Okay? Now, David, would you put the mouse point right on the cusp of that 8-pointed star and zoom out? Zoom, yeah. Zoom in, I mean. You should use the wheel to move it, that's it. And just get to where you can see how the 8-pointed star is drawn in the lines that make up the 5-pointed star. It's not just plopped in the middle of this picture, all right? And that's what I want to show you here. Okay, so these stars actually are showing the different levels of consciousness here. And now what I'd like to move off this and go to that web page, and I'm going to give you some idea where I got this idea.
Okay, let's see.
Firefox or whatever is like Explorer. That's
So then you want questions or comments?
okay. Comments.
Okay, so the 8-pointed star you draw, that's an intentional act within this field?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an intentional act. And what I'm going to show you now is something of how these things go together. So this paper is down here on the web page. Somebody else say something? Please ask questions freely. This isn't a lecture, it's a conversation. one of the tools I use in this paper is the many-pointed star, okay? And here's where I got the intuition from. Come down, David, come down. And I'm looking at how, this is a very short paper. Yeah, okay, now you see where it starts. This is a 12-gon, a dodecagon, and this is a 12-sided figure. And if you do astrology, you'll see this is what you refer to as the semi-sextile, the 30-degree angle. Okay, and a little, come a little more, Dave. Now here is a 60-degree angle, and this is 2 hexagons. And now we're doing, these are 12-pointed stars, and we're building up the 12-pointed stars up from the bottom, okay? This is 3 squares. And you know the 3 squares when you talk about cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Those are the 3 squares you look at. And here's the 4 triangles, and you know those when you say fire, earth, air, water. And then we have the great 12-pointed star, the quincunx star. Okay, so here's the way I think of this. Now come back down.
Up or down?
Down. We're right here. So watch a thought gradually acquire a definite embodiment. So I'm talking about how you watch your thoughts, or how you watch plants grow, or how you watch things happen in the world, because they're all the same. They're all analogies of each other. It's how the mind works. So watch a thought gradually acquire a definite embodiment. In the semi-sextile, the thought, though capable of embodiment, is not yet embodied. Now you know, you can all see we all have problems of self-expression. We know what we want to say, and what comes out of our mouth isn't what we meant to say, and we have problems with embodiment. You might find there's a key semi-sextile in your chart that's responsible for that. Okay, so what they say about semi-sextiles is always the bridesmaid, never the bride, or all dressed up and nowhere to go. All right?
They say? Okay.
In this, you'll have to allow me some poetic use. In the sextile, the thought has successive embodiments, each giving way to the next is a kind of serial monogamy. You might find an artist who has one medium, and then another medium, and then another medium, and never quite settles in one place because the chart's dominated by sextiles. In the square, it's the several bodies of the thought are fighting for supremacy, like saplings fighting for sunlight. Because that's what's going on in the square. We don't really know what we want to do, and the various things in us that are trying to figure out what to do are fighting each other. And there's no way to stop the fight, because the fight has to go on. In the trine, some of the bodies have survived and grown to maturity. And the trine, everybody knows about trines. It's the places in my life where I'm competent. Not where I know anything, because knowledge is not what's going on. It's places in my life where I have a certain competency that I can rely upon, and it flows. So in the quincunx, now this is something mysterious. Maturity is past. Thoughts are no longer what they seem. The decay of the thought, and this is what's going on, although it's very difficult to observe. The decay of the thought gradually reveals glimpses of its essence, like an emeritus professor teaching an elementary course. It reveals it imperfectly. And try and get this image, as though a ball falling towards the ground had to fall halfway first, then halfway again, and then again. Its landing continually postponed. And I think dying is like that. Gradually, we grow older, and at each place of growing older, there's a new Lenny, and the new Lenny looks up, looks around things, and things have slowed down, and the whole world is now accommodated itself to this new velocity, and okay, so this is, now, go back here, David, go back up a little.
More?
Yeah, go back up to the pictures. Between the triangles and the quincunx, there's a vast gulf. Between this competence and this ability to watch things die, there's a tremendous gulf. Because competence, success, say, is well understood. most normal people understand something about what success is and understand they have it or they don't. But this idea of watching things die is very mysterious, and most people can't do it. You can't, if you look around this culture, the whole notion of endings is just very twisted. People don't know how to manage a divorce, people don't know how to manage their kids leaving home, people don't know how to manage losing a job, people don't know how to manage any kind of ending. And the way of managing endings is the quincunx, because the quincunx is the master of endings, because things just end. And to watch them end is the mastery of the quincunx.
So wait, that's not the quincunx, it's the one below the triangle, right?
That's the
one below?
triangles.
And
The
the one below
quincunx is
that?
one below.
This one?
Right, there's the quincunx.
Okay.
Okay, now right there, between that triangles, which is 120 degrees, and the quincunx is 150 degrees, there's a lot that happens. And if you look in my paper, chapter 2A and chapter 3 are about what happens between the triangle and the quincunx, okay? And this, I'm trying to show you where the original intuition comes from that I'm building this paper out of. So the quincunx is a 150 degree angle, and the triangle is 120, and between the 150 and the 120, there's the 144, which is the 5, and the 135, which is the 8. And if you look through the paper, you'll see that that's the way it goes. The first chapter is basically about the square. The second chapter is basically about the triangle. The third chapter is basically about the 8. The fourth chapter is basically about the 5, and then comes the chapter about the quincunx. Okay, so I'm actually following in these stars in increasing angles, and what I'm trying to say, and maybe you can see where that intuition comes from by looking at these pictures, that as the angle gets larger, there's a subtler and subtler state of consciousness. Okay, and the quincunx, when we get there, we'll see that the quincunx that's past the 5 is a very subtle state of consciousness indeed. And what we see reflected in our triangle space from the quincunx is not the full meaning of the quincunx. And I hope to get some of that this week. Okay, anybody want to ask a question? Because this is the groundwork I'm working from.
So you're drawing a 360 degree star, and you're just situating the lines 150 degrees from each other, and you're gonna go around. Before you do that, you have a 12 that forms a 12-foot star.
Right. The 12-pointed star is where I got the original insight.
Yeah.
Because here I think it's relatively easy to describe that these are different states of consciousness, and they get increasingly subtle. And when I put it in the framework of the 360, which I have to do, I need the 5, the 8, and the 9. And that's what I need to get all of them. 5 times 8 times 9 is 360. So I need all of them. That's where I need the 360.
And you're finding that there's a bunch of different kinds of 12s.
Well, that's what I showed you here,
Yeah.
a bunch of different, and each one of these 12s shows a different level of participation in ideas or participation in perception, okay? And the 4 triangles is what's thought of as successful perception, successful living. Because things make sense, it's clear what they are.
Would you say success, different levels or different perspectives?
It's actually different levels.
So how do you come up with a hierarchy? I mean that.
The hierarchy,
I mean, if you have
I
levels.
hope I'm reading the hierarchy from the way things are.
Yeah.
Because, even in ordinary parlance, success is better than the struggle. And it is a hierarchy that we perceive. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the only one I'm doing. There's nothing particularly mystical in these first 4 levels. But when I get to the quincunx, there's definitely something very, very mystical going on. To jump from the 120 to the 150, that's not ordinary. But to get to the 120, it's relatively ordinary.
So you had made a comment where you said You need the 5 and the 8 and the 9 to get to 360?
You need the, yeah, because it's 5 times 8 times 9, it's multiplying.
Right, right. And so, a couple questions came up in my head is, why is your goal 360? Why, do you mean the 5 and the 8 and the 9 with respect to stars?
Well, 360 is the number of the circle.
Right.
That's
Why
all
is
I'm
that your goal?
saying. Because I'm Greek. If I were Indian, I don't think I'd be satisfied with that because it leaves the 7 out, and the 7 is too big in Hindu culture. If you look at Shiva dancing, that's a 7. Because he's got 4 arms and 2 legs and a head, that's a 7. And that's too big a number for Hindu culture, and I couldn't, this wouldn't be true. I'm speaking Greek here.
So when I think of a 5 and an 8 and a 9, they make the circle, and that's beautiful in and of itself from a Greek standpoint.
Yeah?
If I were describing the energy or the feeling or the summary essence of a 5, independent from an 8, independent of a 9, how would you define that?
Well, that's chapter 3.
Just in a couple words for me to hold in my heart.
Can't.
Okay.
That's the most difficult one to say in a couple words because you have your own language for it. Everyone here in this room has his or her own language for what the 5 is. It's the most difficult number to talk about. I can tell you what 3s and 4s are, it's a common language. But for the 5, you have your own language.
Well, the 5 isn't the quincunx.
No, that's the
Related to.
12.
That's the 12.
Yeah.
It's the 5 and the 8 and 9 are between these two.
Well, let's go to the other
Lenny,
paper, David. Go on.
Before you leave, could we just browse through the pictures again with an aesthetic eye? Looking
Okay.
at the first 12 gone all the way through.
Go ahead,
and
David.
just-
Oliver.
Let people have their own visual impressions.
Okay, so this is a 12 gong, and this is, well, basically this is just lines drawn between the 12 equal distant points. And this is just saying the basic situation, the circle's divided in 12. And every circle comes divided in 12. It's very easy to reach with a compass and a straight edge. You divide a circle in 12, and it'd be a simple thing that a high school student learns how to do.
So your thought, Janet, is just to hold it and see it visually.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about these at all. I'm looking at these pictures and how I was so struck when you said how it gets subtler and subtler, the wider the angle.
Right.
That's all I'm looking at right now. That
Okay.
simple idea.
Go ahead, come with me then, guide me.
I'm just looking.
So we'll go to the first one again?
David, go up a little and go to the first one again. And thank you, Janet.
Yeah,
This is
just
very
the
honest.
aesthetics of it.
I spend a lot of time staring at these pictures to get this point and handling them.
They're almost like different embodiments.
They
And
are.
They are different
They are
embodiments.
different
so-
embodiments. Because I mean, look, if you take a garden and you just harrowed the soil and threw in a bunch of seeds. Here we are. Just threw in a bunch of seeds. Now, come down once to the hexagon. Now they're sprouting. But you better not start weeding yet, because they all look the same. I had a garden once that was full of parsnips, and we weeded out all the parsnips and left the Queen Anne's lace. Because you couldn't tell the difference, because Queen Anne's lace is just wild carrots. So, I mean, you really have to be careful here, because you can't really tell what's going on. And now here, in the squares, they're struggling with each other. You can sort of see what they are, but they're struggling for light. They're struggling to be. And our thoughts are often struggling with each other, struggling to be. And you know, I could hear my mother's voice saying, "Don't do that. When you wash that pot, don't run the water in it. First, scrape the stuff out where the pot's dry." And I could hear my mother's voice, and she's talking to me all the time. And to be able to hear whose voice it is amazing. So, okay, so here's the squares. Now,
Can I ask you one math question, just a really subtle math
We're
question?
just looking at the pictures first.
In the triangles, I know what I'm doing. I don't know anything. I don't know what electricity is. I know where to plug the damn thing in. I know what a 3-prong plug is and a 2-prong plug is. I know how to plug it in. I know what to turn the switch. I don't know a thing about electricity. I know I don't stick my hand in the plug. Okay? But I don't know anything about it. There's no knowledge here. If you ask a woman who's a wonderful mother to explain her knowledge of motherhood, she'll back off. I don't know anything. This is just my child. I love him. I know what to do. I know what the form of that love. This is all of the triangle is about that. It's about the competence in ordinary life. And the square is about the struggle that comes when that competence is lacking, or it's not felt to be there. And these are very definitely ordinary levels of consciousness that are really understood by, just generally understood. When I get to the quincunx, there's nothing generally understood there at all. Okay, and if you look at these pictures, you'll see there's something about that final picture. And actually, if you really draw these carefully, you'll see that final picture is in too small a circle. It's fine that those others are in the same size circle, but you really need a larger circle to show that quincunx. Okay?
Yeah,
And
the extension in the body is much greater.
it's much greater because ordinary life is already satisfied in the triangles. It has to get bigger to get to the quincunx. Okay, we good? Janet, we
So
good?
let me see if I follow this. In the second picture, you do 2 hexagons, you're adding in the 2
Right.
from a unific 12. In the third and fourth, you're actually interplay 3 and 4, and you're making geometrics out of 3 and 4. The 3 being trine, the 4 is square, as it were.
Okay.
Is that, I mean, am I following? Am I close here? But there's some logic to it. 3 4s, 4 3s. Is an interplay,
The logic is something like this.
and it's visual.
Go back to the first one.
There's 12.
Okay, the 12 points there are connected, one after the other. Okay, the line connects to the next. Okay, now come down to the next one. The 12 points here are connected 2 points apart.
By adding in the 2.
No,
Dividing
but
by
it's
2.
a 2. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that star, technical name for that star is 12-2. It's 12 points taken 2 at a time. Now come down a little to the squares. The technical name for this star is 12-3. It's 12 points taken 3 at a time. And each time I grab off a bigger piece of it as I go around. If you come down to the triangles, that's 12 points taken 4 at a time.
Right.
And then you come down to the quincunx, it's 12 points taken 5
You
at
don't
a
get
time.
But if you stop, if you go. if you
Lenny,
just-
show what you mean by 4
Taken 4 at a
points.
time.
Go point at it. What's that?
Work this thing.
You could use your
It's
finger.
a cat toy.
A cat toy.
You got it, you got it.
You had it.
You had it.
I did.
Well, you did.
on the screen.
How about the clip?
Just don't shine it in somebody's eyes. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Okay, so you see, here's the point we start with. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Why?
They're
Take
triangles.
4 at a time.
Okay, got
That's
it.
how I get the triangles. I get, it's 12 points
Count
taken
off by
4 at a
4.
time. Count off by 4.
So that's so that you
1, 2,
can hit
3,
all
4.
triangles.
It's
Mhm.
the elements, the
Now here,
Defective cat toy.
Yes.
I lost it.
Yeah, use this one.
Ooh.
Got a better one?
Well, I don't think it's better, but I think you'd be able to use it.
It's 4 triangles.
Okay.
Woo.
Now here, we start here and we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see how the line goes there?
Yep.
That's 12 points taken 5 at a time. Now that star I was showing you before, it was 360 points taken 144 at a time.
I don't see somebody see the other ones.
Sorry to say it louder, Anna. Anna.
Harder to follow this.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I mean, I can count 5, that
Okay, 1, 2,
Show the
3,
line.
4,
Right.
5.
Show the
The
line.
line comes down here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is
Get another
12
one.
points, taken 5 at a time. Follow me?
You know, on that one, and I believe in conformable with what you're trying to do, that 5 is not made up of any, there's no
Division.
specific internal within it now. You can't
Right.
come up with a,
That's right,
Yeah,
because
but-
5 doesn't divide 12.
you can't come up with a triangle to create it, you can't come up with a
Because-
square to create
Because
it.
5 doesn't divide 12. Okay?
So it's the end of the line.
See it?
So, well, yeah, it's a unified meaning that's outside the set that you. that
Right, when I
established.
draw that other one, 360 points, 144 points apart. 144 divides 360. Okay, it's 360 divided by 144 is 5 divided by 2. And so that's why you get 5-pointed stars there, because the stars that turn up are 5 divided by 2. So well, the geometry mirrors the arithmetic. Okay?
It's the first time that it's not an independent thing.
Right. Okay, so here's, lost them again. Here's 12 points, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My cat follows these things better than I do. Okay, we good?
And that uniqueness is why you equate it with self, or it's from having equated with self.
No, not yet.
But the
Don't
fi-
jump
the
ahead,
five,
don't jump, you're
you're-
jumping way too far ahead.
So you already established that, but okay, but that's fine.
Yeah,
Do you put meaning in the fact that in this quincunx star, all of the other stars are contained in there?
that's right. That's right, you could see that inside the quincunx star, there's the 4 triangles. Do you see them right there?
I can
Sure.
Yes. Make it bigger?
No, it doesn't matter.
Oh.
It's a little too big. Okay, you can see now.
2, 3.
David, can you point to it, the
There's
triangles?
there's a square.
Yes.
And before
Here's the
square.
triangle.
Where do you want me to point?
Wait, can you do the triangle?
There's
There are 3
Triangles.
squares, David.
There's the triangles.
Where's the
These
square?
3 squares?
No, the
There's
square.
4, there's a triangle, you have to see the triangles. You come down to the first set of intersections.
So you're going too far. So the square, the triangles are from here to here to here to there.
Okay, I see the
I
square.
really can't see triangles here.
Lenny, you wanna do it with the red? Can you do it with the red?
Here,
Thank you. Finger.
Right. Oh,
Show the square.
okay, I got it now.
Yep.
Okay?
Steve, show him the square.
Here's
Square.
a triangle.
Yeah, square.
There's a triangle.
And the first gone and the second gone, they're all there.
And if you went down and you'd see the 2 hexagons there, and you see right in the center is the dodecagon. And these triangles are all nested. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to show. These are nested levels of consciousness.
Cool. Very cool.
All right? Thank you for that, whatever
So
question.
go over that again, there's a triangle, a square, what else?
If you go up, you see the triangles are inside there,
Yeah. No,
then
I know that.
inside the triangles are the squares,
Squares.
and inside the squares are the hexagons, and then,
Oh, yeah.
and then, in the center's the dodecagon.
Okay, good.
there's the
Good, got it.
dodecagon right there.
And the dodecagon is in each one of them?
Yes,
Yes, yeah.
Yes,
The
they're all-
dodecagon is the
they're all-
internal in here.
It's
All internal
Okay.
area.
because, you know, if you look at the plant, the fact that we threw the seeds out is inside all of the things that's happening. If we look at our mind, if we look at the finished thoughts, we'll see the unfinished thoughts are the foundation of the finished thoughts. Okay? That's the same thing. The dodecagon is inside everything here. Okay, and now what I'm trying to say is the 12-pointed star actually gives us a picture of what thought looks like. I'm not saying the picture, it's just a picture of what thought looks like.
So you're doing this on a plane, but actually, the polyhedra all nest if you do it on a sphere, or within a sphere. All the polyhedra nest within each other.
Oh, the
similarly to
centipede's
what
gonna
you're doing
stop
here.
moving.
The centipede's gonna stop moving, right? Okay, hold that thought, because we get lost there. Okay, we good here?
We're good.
Anybody? Any?
Yeah, I have a question,
Yeah, go on.
but I'm not sure this is the time or place
Try
for
it.
it. You're calling the Quinton Star 5.
No, no, I'm not calling it 5. This is 12 things taken 5 at a time.
Okay.
The 5 is
The
incidental.
5 is the pentacle, the 5 is the 5-pointed star, the 5 is the quintile.
Right, the 5 here is incidental. It's just,
Okay, good, thank you.
okay?
Yeah, because that's where I lost you.
It's a very difficult thing to make the distinction between geometric number and counting number, because we've been taught in our backwards education system only about counting numbers. And so we've been taught that multiplication is just a stack of additions, and that's false. And we've been taught that the way you do geometry is you do proofs. It's not the way you do geometry. The way you do geometry is you draw things. You draw things until the beauty of them fills you up. That's the way you do geometry. And so I'm countering, I'm working against our education here.
So, I'd like you to say more about that, or David? Geometric number,
On
does
second
David?
thought, I agree with Lenny that, oh, I'm sorry, which David?
Henderson?
Yes.
What does that mean to you, geometric numbers, not arithmetic number, counting number?
Oh, yeah. this-
How do you say that?
I mean, because you can see it. You can see the geometry. The numbers are just things you count and manipulate and calculate with. The geometry are figures that you can see and experience directly.
Let me give you an answer to that. 3 plus 1 is 4, right? You can't add a triangle, you gotta add 1 to a triangle and get a square. It actually shows the individuality of the numbers.
That's good. That's a good answer.
The numbers are really distinct individuals. They're not related by addition. They're related by multiplication because in multiplication their identity is preserved.
That makes sense.
Thank you. Every number is an energy system into itself.
Energy system onto itself, that's good. That's good.
Again, just to repeat, I got confused about you using the word 5 so much in the quincunx, because to me the 5 is the quintile.
It's only 5 by
So just
counting here. It's a counting 5, not a geometric 5.
It's a counting 5.
Quantitative versus qualitative.
There's
Right.
no pentagon.
There's no pentagon here, the 5-ness, there's no 5-ness
You were
here.
just counting.
Right,
points.
that's where I got
It's
confused.
just a 12-ness, and these are the various kinds of 12-ness.
I got confused on that too.
Well, we've used numbers as metaphors too often, and we have to get out of the habit and understand. Here I'm using the number as 5 because there's 5 people sitting at the table, and here I'm using the number as 5 because it's a pentagon. That's not the same universe.
I understand, it's just to me, I understood the division of, like multiplication division, that they're retained, of the trines and the squares and the hexagons. When we got to this, 5 is not a part of this. This is 12 and 1. There is no division in
There's
my
no
mind.
division here.
And that's why when you said 5, you were just counting points to me. It didn't mean anything.
So,
That's right, just, now go up a little here, and let me tell you something else that's a problem with the numbers. This number here shows you 4 times 3. Go up 1. This one shows you 3 times 4.
Right?
You were taught 3 times 4 equals 4 times 3. Bullshit. 3 times 4 is one thing and 4 times 3 is another thing. Okay, so really, here's the problem. Your education is false. And that's very difficult to deal with because it happened when you were too young to be able to defend yourself against this false education. These numbers have to be taken apart and given their individuality. 4 triangles is not the same as 3 squares. Okay, and we're And now when we come down to this 5 that's in the quincunx, it's not the same as the 5 that's in the 5-pointed star. This 5, you're just counting, you know? It's like,
So we weren't taught meaning, we were taught efficiency of using numbers to
Summation.
accomplish.
Commercial purposes.
Yeah.
you know, just imagine you went to the horse races, and you're gonna win 2 races, and one of them the odds is 2 to 1, and the other one the odds is 5 to 1. So let's say the 2 to 1 race comes first, and you win it, and you say, okay, great, and you bet all your money on the 5 to 1 race. And so that's 2 times 5 is 10, okay. Now suppose the 5 to 1 race comes first. You're gonna bet all, and you win it. You're gonna bet all your money on the 2 to 1 race? Heck no. So 5 times 2 isn't the same as 2 times 5. Even in that, where you're counting. So this idea that one thing equals another is really a difficult thing that we've been saddled with. That to actually take these numbers apart and learn to think for ourselves at what's going on here. It's very difficult to do because we've been conditioned, we've been brainwashed that here's what numbers are, and we've been brainwashed by teachers who never thought about it. It's not that they don't understand; they've never thought about it. Okay, and so here's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to think about it, and in thinking about it, there's a very interesting harvest.
You know, in other languages, numbers are like names for forms. Like, I'm sorry, I can't help it, but I think in Italian a lot. And, you know, if you think of the numbers, the names of the numbers in Italian, they're totally different than in English. Like, the number for 2 is due, which is like
Duality.
duo, 2. You know, but you see a form when you think the translation rather than just 2, you know, a concept. It's just that's sort of seems like what you're saying is the numbers are names for forms.
They're names for forms. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, so can let's go back to the levels of selfhood paper and come to the pentagon.
E.
That's not it.
E.
So,
E. E. E.
I thought we had it. Where is the
No, the level. I think that's a PDF.
The levels of paper was a
In
PDF.
the original?
Yeah.
So was it open?
I thought you,
I don't think you opened it yet.
because we were just in the 12 on the website?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so,
PDF, where is that doc?
Yeah, through the GeoGebra file folder, but there isn't, let's see what happens with it. It was on there.
yeah,
It's there somewhere.
I had it earlier. So we'll find it again.
What about in the Adobe Reader?
No, that's not it. No, it's not. It's.
It's an.
Where you can go, point at
Yeah.
the Adobe Reader and see what comes up.
To go to Adobe Reader.
Down below, just one down, that's it. Now there.
Levels of selfhood. See right on top there?
Ooh,
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Okay. Come down to chapter 3. So basically now what I've just covered is another version of chapter 1 and 2 and 2A. And let's go to chapter 3 because we've got a big problem here.
It's page what?
Page 12, I think.
Yep.
Interesting that it's page 12.
Yep.
So those of you who weren't here last week, I'll leave you to. We saw a movie of that one.
Yeah, we just went through last week.
Okay. So now, this is some movie.
This is the movie we saw.
Okay.
Where's this one?
What do you mean?
Okay. Now here's the pentagon. This is the 5 I want to talk about. Now, this is a very puzzling figure, because nature is all built in 3s and 4s, and there's 5s kind of hidden around somewhere, like in the spiral form of the seeds on a sunflower. You know, it's kind of hidden in some unusual places. But basically, we think in 3s and 4s. So if you're in this state, or you're bumping up against this state, or you glimpse this state, you have your own language for it. And it's very difficult to talk about the state you're in because nobody else understands what you're talking about. And you know what you're talking about, but nobody else understands what you're talking about. And this is beyond any problems of self-expression, because I don't have any particular problems of self-expression. But if I get into talking about this state, you're not going to know what I'm talking about at all. And maybe I won't either. Anyway, so I call this particular form of grace, the grace that leads you to this state, the skyhook. Now, and I realize, I'm talking Lenny's language here, because this sudden emergence of this state, that's what happened to me. Maybe it didn't happen to you that way. Maybe there were some subtle changes that happened, that gradually you found yourself, little by little, a different person. And you didn't know where it came from, and it was hard to credit it.
No, I got skyhooks.
I know you got skyhook.
He's talking to me.
I knew I was talking about you.
He's talking to you.
He's talking to me.
Here's another thing. It's very difficult. The only way you could really know you're in this state is if somebody with authority actually can express it to you. And it's not necessarily PB, the person with authority, or it could, but I need a PB. But you might not. It might be somebody who just happens because of their particular relation to you or a particular circumstance might have the authority. When I was hanging around the nines a lot, there was this one girl who went to India, and she came back and I took one look at her and I said, okay, when did it happen? And she looked at me startled for a minute, and then she realized what I was talking about and told me about that she got on a bus and there was this woman in front of her, and all of a sudden she saw something she'd never seen before. And I could see it in her, and it was my authority to tell her, and I've never seen her again since then. It was my authority to tell her something, to just point out that experience and tell her something unusual happened to you there. Don't flush that experience into the pile with everything else. I had the authority. I didn't say you found yourself or anything. I didn't know what the hell she found. I knew she found something she'd never seen before, and that it marked her. I could see there was something in her sensuality that was underlined and doubted in a way that it wasn't before. So sometimes, so the question is, what state am I in? Someone has to be able to tell me. I might not know because I'm too stupid to understand what state I'm in. I might understand what state somebody else is in, but I'm too stupid to understand my own state. I have to have some help. So this is why there's a transmission or a certification or something.
Does it have to be someone?
No, it could be a book. It could be a piece of music that tells you. It could be,
Ken?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
It's very artistic, this.
yeah, it could, right.
Say it louder. What
This
Jenny
is a
said.
state of creativity in my mind, in a state, or what Lenny's calling grace. And so when Jenny said, does it have to be a person? It could be inspiration itself.
Right, it could be a piece of music. It could be any way in which the state becomes evident to me or evident to anyone that they're in this state. But the 5 is a different place that suddenly, and what happens, come down a little, David. But come down to the quote from Anthony there. All right, here's the quote. He says, a person reaches a stage in meditation where he goes into the void mind. Now, you're not going to say, I went into the void mind. Anthony might say, oh, you went into the void mind. You say, oh, yeah? Oh, wow, I went into the void mind. You know, so what he's describing here is something that's really beyond us. And it's beyond us to certify for ourselves. He says, you still have an ego, but the function of egotism is gone. Yeah, it's gone, but the habits of egotism are still there. And the function may be gone, but the habits are still there. So I still catch myself saying, oh, that's true, rather than saying, oh, that's my experience. Because that's, to understand, to take these habits of egotism and gradually hear that they're not true anymore, that they don't mean anything to me anymore. Could take 30, 40, 50 years. And even so, it's good work to do it in 30, 40, 50 years, to discard those habits. So, but what he's saying there is you're now at what the Sufis call the first of three stations. And if you look in Richard Rose's work, you'll find there's something very similar where he says here, now you're actually found the path. Richard Rose says that. Now you can start looking. And this is what happens. This is the beginning of the path. It's not the end of the path. This is the beginning of the path. Because now the Overself is leading me, and leading me who knows where, because I don't know where I'm going. I may have a concept of enlightenment or something, but it's just words. I don't know what it is. So he says, now you've realized the ego is absolute emptiness. Well, that realized is a strange word. It's nothing, there's nothing there. It's a matrix of thoughts and possibilities. It's a matrix of habits that are very intense. And it may have lost its center, but it hasn't lost the intensity of those habits. And there's a gradual sequence of little satoris, or little enlightenments, or little silences that come and silence one habit, and silence another, and take another habit that I thought was a bad habit and say, oh no, keep that one, because that one has a hidden gold in it. And the higher soul starts instructing you. And we can feel that we're being instructed, we're being guided, and gradually we find that it's not my will, but the will of the higher self that's leading. And this is where it begins. This is where it begins when this pentacle happens, and it may be very quiet. And okay? Go.
Can I just sort of, I'm just going to turn it on its head and say that this is a state of, and I mean, the Persian mystics would say a state of the recognition of the angelic realms, and that I think, like this, you're taking it from the point of view of the ego entering the void, but I think children are very aware of the five-pointed star, the quintile realm, before the ego is actually formulated. In other words, I think that this infusion or inspired state is blocked by what you call the world of fours, but is accessed many times by people for whom the ego dissolves, and children are in the state alert and see all kinds of stuff from here. Anyway, that's...
I agree. I agree with that, but still, the worlds of threes and fours has to be brought into it, has to be conquered. This represents the first step in conquering that world of threes and fours. It has to be conquered. So I agree, and we probably have two experiences from our childhood that mark what the character of this five experience is going to be. Because in our childhood we knew some things, and it's difficult to hold on to them because there were too many threes and fours and too many obstacles. Okay?
So the threes and fours are the ego's life.
Yes, they're the life of ordinary things
And you get
that
very
they identify
quiet.
with.
You silence that going on in this first station.
Yeah, but the quieting them isn't enough. They have to be conquered.
I wonder about this concept, at least my experience of seeing beyond or glimpsing beyond the reality of a 3 and 4 consciousness. For me, and this may be different for other people, I realize, is not a matter of fire conquering, like annihilation conquering,
No?
but more of a not needing them, like the fear grip needing to hold on to what is known is softened, and so it's more of a softening and letting go than a conquering. But I understand how they're the same. I'm just sharing the flavor that I've
Yep.
experienced.
Yeah, your flavor's different from mine.
Yeah. So not negating, just
No,
sharing.
no, I can only write for my flavor, and this is the most individual part. of the whole thing. So all I'm writing here is an example. Everything I've written here is an example of how this state is. If you were writing this, you would write an entirely different language, okay? And your language is just as good as mine, I'm just here talking.
I was thinking last time you discussed this para, that one of the differences between the void mind or empty awareness and the ego is that one's a fact and the other is a fiction. So it's actually fairly cut and dry. I mean, you could struggle, the ego has to struggle to get to that insight, but
It's a fact.
its existence is a thought versus what you are, which is a fact.
Okay? But as soon as you start talking about it, it's a fiction.
Right.
Right.
So this is my fiction.
Well, then that's the nature of the five, unspoken. Creativity, well, creativity is bigger than.
Okay, so and I quoted later from Anthony also. He said, when you see what I'm really referring to, when I see what I'm really saying, you'll come throw rocks at my window. And he was referring to this five, because sometimes what happens is so difficult that all of a sudden my childhood person has disappeared. I couldn't talk to my mother anymore. My mother didn't recognize me. She kept peering at me, trying to figure out what had happened to her son. Because she could tell there was something very different about him. And the truth was, her son's dead. What am I going to say? Oh, it's okay, Mom, your son's dead, I still love you. There's absolutely no way to talk about it. Absolutely no way to, that was my experience. There was just no way to bring it in. And I know people who've had this experience who wouldn't agree that anything good happened to them. It's just a big disaster. And they're just trying to figure out who to blame for it. It's very difficult because little Lenny's gone. Well, I said good riddance, but maybe you wouldn't, So I'm just trying to get a hold of this experience, because even if it happens really quietly, it can be very difficult, because who is this masked man? Who is this masked woman? Who is this person now who's so quiet, who seems to know something? And how do I relate this person to the child who I was, who didn't know anything and who was very unhappy? And suddenly, where's this little piece coming from? Where is it? And I could read it in the books, and maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, because it wasn't what I thought it was going to be like. Or maybe it was.
And
Anyhow,
you're saying this is the five?
this is the five.
So why did Anthony say you're gonna throw rocks?
Because it's not going to be what you thought it was going to be. It's not going to be what you dreamed, that you were going to be enlightened, or you were going to be elevated, or you were going to be...
But in your description, Lenny, it sounded like your mom would want to throw the rocks.
Well, and her son, if I let him, would have wanted to throw the rocks. I mean, it was very difficult.
Or you could say, once you've had this glimpse, a lot of things that you're attached to in your life start dissolving pretty quickly.
And that can cause problems in your life.
And that can make you, in other words, things can't appear the way they appeared before, and then a lot of things start happening.
I felt very fortunate that my son's still like this.
Or started to.
I felt very fortunate that David still loved me, because David and I go way back, and that would have been impossible for me to lose that friendship. But some friendships I did lose. There's hardly anybody who I went to school with at any level that I have any friendship with. It's very difficult. I managed to get back with my sister. It took a while. Yes.
Now, I was wondering, Lenny, after a period of years, I'm sure things are happening on and off, but did you find that you did integrate it more so that maybe you could talk to somebody from your early years again, with it more somehow more integrated?
Maybe. For me, and this is just for me, Peg, because for you it's different. For me, it's all been deliberately shaping my feelings. Deliberately telling myself, no, you don't feel that, you feel this. And deliberately telling this feeling, shut up, I've heard enough of you, you're not relevant anymore. And it's not telling a thought to shut up, it's telling a feeling to shut up. Just getting rid of a feeling because it didn't work anymore. So it's very different between feeling and I feel. And a lot of what happens in the disappearance of ego is that there's a lot of feelings that have been there for a long time, and the I isn't there anymore. And so it's optional whether it's I feel or not. Yeah.
So
And
there's a place from which you are making those decisions.
That's right.
different. Yeah.
you could say a place of deeper feeling. But I've been led to this. I've been very deliberate making friends with my sister. My sister was very difficult to make friends with because she was seeing somebody else. And she still sees somebody else, but she gets a glimmer now because she comes to my house and gets so peaceful, she can't ignore it. And that's really part of what happened with her. But anyway.
I guess my other problem with this quote is that it puts the burden sort of on meditation, like, oh yeah, like I'm really going to go into the void. Whereas actually it can occur as a spontaneous insight walking down the street or
That's right.
having a sandwich at a...
But I don't know that he meant to put the burden on meditation. I think that was just the language he was using. Because, when he told me about my experiences is, oh yeah, you found the third level of the anima. I wanted to kick him. What do you mean the third level of the anima? How's that going to help me? I don't understand what that is. So, now I understand what that is, but I wouldn't have then. It means you reach the virginal level of the mind where the thoughts are they've never been born before. Okay, so the other thing I mentioned in here is Jung's essay on the power personality. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. There's a book of Jung's called Two Essays on Analytical Psychology, and the second essay in that book is about the meetings of the ego with the unconscious, and that's his language for it. And he talks about that you have an experience where the ego defeats the anima, and what he means is that the bridge to the unconscious has been shattered, and that the unconscious is perceived by multiple bridges which no longer have a numinosity to them that they did before. And it seems like the anima has lost her mana. She's lost her power. And that is one of the ways that this experience can happen. The anima, that projected beauty, that projected wonderful thing, loses its power. And Jung says there's a great danger here when the anima loses power because you could think you have it. And if you fall into that trap of thinking you have the power, you can lose everything you gained. And his essay is worth reading. It's called the Essay on the Mana Personality, and I read it every once in a while. I read it just to see if it sets off any alarm bells in me. So you could get one of the forms is the great teacher, or you could be the great disciple, or there's all kinds of ways in which the mana personality can invade us, and the only remedy he gives is deal with these experiences rationally. Don't rush off and be all enthusiastic about something, whether positively or negatively, because you maybe make the mistake. So, anyway, so much for that. And one big difficulty that Jung doesn't mention is that this experience is so isolating. And one of the reasons that we get so isolated is that we're stuck with our own language. Something wonderful has happened or is happening, and we don't know how to talk about it. And even our dearest friends might not understand what we're talking about. And it's very difficult to get through the isolation of this experience. And it just have to cling to the overself's voice and keep clinging and clinging and hope it guides us through.
Can you go back up just for a second, where it says freedom or justice? That page.
Oh, you like that one, huh, Ann?
Well, it was very important to me. You told me that maybe five up, I think.
You know where it is, Lenny?
It's just, it's at the maybe it's at the top of the next page. You told this to me when I was getting divorced, and it helped me through.
That was one of the ways that I got through the way I was eased out of Cornell. I was working there as a computer programmer, and it got clear that I wasn't wanted anymore. And it wasn't very friendly, and it wasn't very pleasant. And I realized I just wanted out. I didn't want to cling to the justice of the situation, because I would be just continuing in something that I wanted out of. And so I just kept saying, freedom, not justice. And I just wanted out.
Got me through my divorce.
And it's a very nice way to get out of some of the things that have to be gotten out of when you have this experience, because some things may need to be finished, but other things I may be free to walk away from, regardless of common morality on what one should do or how one should handle things. And if I listen, I can hear the soul's voice telling me, get out, don't worry about that, get out. That's the point. Yeah. That's the idea of what needs to be internalized and what, because a lot of things need to be internalized. A lot of things that I didn't think I would have to deal with myself have to be dealt with. And a lot of things I thought I have to deal with myself don't have to be dealt with. And the soul tells me which is which. And self-knowledge is a very strange thing, because some of the corners are dirty and my broom doesn't work. And some of the corners, suddenly my broom works, it never did. And
So, Lenny,
yeah,
I don't know.
go ahead.
Finish your sentence.
No, that's fine.
My slight thing about this is a state where you enter the void, I think is misleading as it was for Mark, because the statement you just made about my soul tells me, or my soul corrects me, the ability to say that, the ability to recognize that one is being infused or informed by soul is this state, as far in my understanding.
That's right, and it grows, the
And-
confidence in the
Okay,
soul grows.
so that's why, Mark, the thing about, it's this meditative void state, I agree with you, that's far too pat or simplistic. That's why I said the angelic realm of soul before, because you're starting to discern that there's something guiding your life that's not part of the manifest, just the manifest.
Call it what you want. I'm happy with anything that makes you happy. It's very difficult to name.
Well, I'm just commenting on void mind in its different flavors.
Okay,
Well, I could throw out my 2 cents here, which is, Anthony would say that there's 2 different realizations that are necessary components of self-realization. One is the emptiness of the ego, and the other is an experience of oneness. So I would say really, the guidance by the overself is on the oneness side of things. Like if you simply have the experience of the emptiness of the ego, and it doesn't necessarily lead to an instruction by other, right? So I would say it's really on the oneness side that other component comes in. That's
I
my 2
agree,
cents.
some people seem to have this experience and get abandoned there. This is where they live for the whole rest of their lives. They live in a state of, well, they establish themselves as teachers of one sort or another, and now some of them might be very useful as teachers of one sort or another, but it doesn't seem that their growth is happening in the way that he describes here. So there's something like that. There's 2 things happening here, that's right.
Don't interrupt.
But if I'm following, the 5 though, I wouldn't call it illusory or fictive. It kind of stands as a moment of integrality and capacity.
That's right.
And it's, it gives you, it seems that a structure, don't take it too far in any direction, but structure is now there to receive over self, as it were, to look at ego as needing work, as it were, all those things. With that 5, the 5 actually, but it's independent and unique. I think your point is.
I agree with that. The thing where the disappearance of the ego is most profound for me is the difference between feeling and I feel, between thinking and I think. I can see that there's feelings present in me and that I have the liberty to feel them, to say I feel this or to reject it. There's thinkings that are present in me and I can look at them and say, well, yes, I heard that someplace, and previously I agreed to it and said, I think that. But now I can see I have an option. It's just something I heard someplace. And there's this way in which the I becomes more optional as the center of experience. And in that way, the ego weakens.
But it also becomes actually essential with that 5, you see.
It becomes essential, yes, because
And
a different I,
right.
a different I becomes the center of the experience.
Yes.
And I don't know if I want to use the word witness because that means different things to different people. But a different I becomes the center of the experience. And this different I is what's the interesting one. And I don't know enough about the ego to say what the ego is there or not, but I could describe it in my own way, yeah?
But if you just follow your formalism, it kind of has assimilated the 2, the 3, the 4, from the 4 to 3 to 2.
It's
the 1.
assimilating them, that's right.
How does it, yeah, and if you just do it that way, it actually, oh yeah, look, the geometry shows this.
That's right. And if you drew this 5, you see you'd have that 360, 144. And that 144 is bigger than the 120. It's bigger than the triangle, and it's capable of having all those triangle states as within it, as smaller states within it. It's capable of swallowing the world. So that, and it's indigestible.
Did you already do the movie of that? Lenny?
What, this one?
The one you just mentioned?
It's this one.
Is this the one you just mentioned? Hello?
No, this is my favorite.
Well, then we should do this one.
What page are we on here?
17.
Thank you.
Somehow I got the colors really beautiful on this one.
Well, then we should see the movie so you can see how it got built.
So Lenny,
360, 144. 72 5-pointed stars.
Right, well, what page is this?
17.
David, can you find it, page 17?
I will give it a good try.
my experience a bit of what you're saying, Lenny, and I just want to see if this is resonating.
Oh, no,
Because what you were
it's
saying
definitely-
about feeling that I feel and thinking and I feel resonated in that, in my experience, it's the first time where it feels like there's choice.
Yep.
And it feels like there's an observer. It's like
Yep.
the observer is bird.
Yeah, you've been sharing some of that.
That's
You say
the other
the
day.
observer's what?
The birth of the
Oh, the
observer.
birth.
Yeah, and there's choices. Isn't that marvelous, the way there's
It's like
choices?
reactivity in the 3 and 4.
That's right. The
That's the
reactivity
first
is,
time.
the reactivity is not questionable.
Right, there's,
Right.
but what's interesting to me is that it's also the first point of doubt in a healthy way, where you don't believe everything that your mind is saying.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Mine's such a fucking tyrant.
You don't believe everything, huh?
This is the one?
Yeah. Oh, no, this isn't the one.
This isn't the one.
This isn't the one.
Doesn't look like the one, yeah.
No.
The
All
one-
right, what do you want?
This
Tell me
page
which
17?
This is page, this is, it was labeled 17.
That's 18.
This is on 18, right?
Go back.
Wait,
This is
Second,
18.
I lied.
I got lost.
That's it. That was it, I think.
The
Well,
three,
that was back on the PDF.
Oh.
no, go back to the previous page. Maybe I got the page wrong.
36144.
This should be a 36144. So go to page 16 and see what you got.
Yeah, just a second, I'm sorry. I got lost out of my pages here. So this is,
It's not that one.
Wait, I thought it was there.
Yeah, I thought we just.
That's PDF. Ah, we have to be in GeoGebra? Uh-huh.
I'll find it.
Okay.
It's right
Alright.
No, you won't find it in JoJo. You have to go back to the flash drive.
Which
Right.
is what?
there. Which I'm having trouble finding right now.
Computer, yeah, computer. Go to the flash drive. Level the cell.
David, Susan's
Let there, and
Yeah.
see what's on page 17.
16.
No,
16, page 16, I'm sorry. Yeah,
There you go.
that one.
That one. Alright.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Yeah,
That's the one.
we'll work on it.
The center looks like it's breathing.
It what?
Kind of breathes at you.
It
Try and
breathes?
stare at it.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah.
trouble focusing.
What did you say,
She
Jen?
said,
When I was looking at it, the shadow kept going up.
Yeah,
It almost
I
looks
can't
like
even
it starts
look
to
at it.
breathe at you.
Okay.
So you know how to get the navigation bar, right mouse. Okay. Okay, now shrink the picture so we have the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'll go back. Picture.
The wheel. Okay, now move it up.
boy, it's really funneling.
That's
Thank
what
you,
Jenny
David.
meant.
Yeah.
It's a vortex.
Okay, now play it in about 1 second.
Makes me sick.
Okay,
You can
Okay,
close
now
your eyes.
just watch how these happen. I really got the colors right on this one.
Yeah.
What's happening here is the 5-pointed star fills the world.
It feels like it's watching an embryo to me, like it's watching the way the body is put together.
Bear in mind that Schwaller-Delubic characterized the phi ratio as the principle of generation, and you just watched it dynamically unfold.
That's
Wow.
right.
The principle of generation.
Pencil of generation.
Can we see it again? You could go faster.
David, go back to the beginning and play it at about a quarter of a second. This one's pretty wonderful, huh? It's really neat how that 5-pointed star in the center just grows and fills it up.
My favorite object that I inherited from my mother-in-law is a little pentagon. It's a mirror. And printed in the center of the pentagon with a dove above the words, "Draw near to God, and God will draw near to you."
Yep. That's the story.
Is there a reason it's building counterclockwise, or is that just?
I don't know.
Shouldn't make any difference.
It's just, it's the order in which I built those 5-pointed stars. And I could have built them in any other order. Some of the pictures I did, I built them in random orders, just to see how they would come. I just love the way this one is. I wouldn't touch it.
And some people divide the dividing line, they do it from left to right, and others do it from right to left. It's still the same principle.
Okay, enough. So,
That's beautiful. Yeah.
so this is, so you see what I mean by a 360 pointed star. That's 72 fives. Just like in the 12 pointed star, there were 4 threes, or there were 3 fours. Here's a 360 pointed star where there's 72 fives. 360 is so big, and has so many numbers in it, that there are just literally thousands of 360 pointed stars. And I certainly haven't drawn all the meaningful ones.
Could I remind you of something that you and I spoke about with this, that I thought was helpful? When, this winter when we were talking about this, we noticed that the energetic state of being informed by the soul, let's say, that this represents, is entirely allows for the experience of the quincunx to shift entirely from something that fails to something that's a breakthrough.
Right, I'm getting there.
Oh.
That's where we're going next.
Oh, okay.
Because that's exactly the point. Without this experience, and I don't mean without the fingertips on this, without an experience like this, where the soul fills the world, the notion of the quincunx is very difficult. Okay, so,
Go back to the paper?
yeah. When the paper, get a couple pages up.
Up or down?
Couple pages down. There's a star there, that chaotic star. No,
I think it's on
More,
page
more.
18.
this one. I want you to look at this one. Because this one's a real pain in the neck. Okay, I've got a 12 in there, you could see, and an 8 and a 5.
What
And this-
was?
This picture, the 12 is black, the 8's in red, and the 5's in purple. And they're competing. And this is a very difficult state because here we have to recognize the creativity of our own faults and to include our faults in the quest. And this is one of the preludes to the quincunx, because one of the problems of these states right now is that I keep insisting that I know who I am. And this is part of what helps shatter that. And it's very important for a while to know who I am, because I need that strength. And then I have to be strong enough so that this insistence that I know who I am starts to fade and starts to be less important. Because I'm one thing in one situation, I'm another thing in another situation. I come to one situation, I'm completely competent. Another situation, I'm totally incompetent. They don't add up. And if I can get to the point where they don't add up, now I'm getting competent enough so that I don't care who I am. Who I am is not a who anymore. Who I am starts becoming something much deeper. Okay, and this chaotic state here, and if I could really understand it, I would draw a 40-pointed star and just show you the 8 and 5, but I haven't drawn one yet that satisfies me. I keep drawing a square in the center, and it keeps disturbing me. But here, maybe you can see, and maybe you can't. Maybe I've just drawn my confusion.
You can't draw a 40-pointed star?
I can't draw one that makes me peaceful. If I draw any of the others, it doesn't have a triangle in it. So that means my own voice is silenced. The triangle is the daemon's voice. And a lot of these stars, I can make them work by sticking a triangle in the center, and everybody listens to the triangle, because the triangle knows what he's doing. He may be wrong, but he still knows what he's doing. And if something like this, I've got the 8 and the 5, I don't have a triangle. If I put something in the middle, it's a square, which means there's an argument going on. Or it means that somehow the duality has settled on something, and I don't know how to draw it. So here's what we have, is as far as I got with this.
It seems though if you are drawing something that's inherently about shaking something up,
Yep,
then having a square at the center, which is jarring, feels kind of right to me.
okay, yeah, it's not right to me too, but I didn't know how to draw it peacefully.
Right.
Jarring and peaceful go together?
Yeah, it's some, yeah.
I understand. I understand.
Okay, so the next chapter is you can read it for yourself. The addendum, the fellow carrying the board. It's just it really. He has this phrase on there that really is important. That we could get into a state of self-satisfaction here, which he calls sitting on the clean white ground, and it's very necessary to, if we really want to meet the whole soul, keep moving.
So Lenny, the quincunx, as hard as it is, it's like a blessing in disguise.
Well, what I call the quincunx is the soul as self and others. In other words, that what happens in this state is that the soul's voice speaks, and it no longer has to be my voice.
Yeah, I don't want to, yeah.
That and this quincunx state is the I has broken to such a point, has become so deep that I can hear its voice even if it's coming out of your mouth. Okay? I can hear its voice wherever it's coming out of. I can hear its voice when there's no voice. Okay? And this quincunx, this is the quincunx that's not conceivable to ordinary consciousness, because it's not made out of 3s and 4s. It's in a different realm.
Well, it would be a lot of work to even honor it.
Well, what happens, for example, is I hear music, and I notice that I wasn't there. And it's okay that I wasn't there. I don't say to myself, I heard that piece of music. I know I wasn't there. I know that the music filled the world and Lenny was absent. And that's a comfortable thing. And I can't tell you what I heard because
You were in,
I wasn't there.
yeah.
Here's an interesting
But how would
experience.
Cindy experience that?
Same way.
When you have experiences of artistic creativity, it's the other way around. The object isn't there. The object,
Yeah.
it's only the creative mind that's present, forming things. PB, Randy, some of the things you've written about PB that were pretty wonderful, he must have given you that impression that there often wasn't anybody there in the same way that you and I would have somebody there all the time.
Yeah, from my experience of it was about the there. Like, if I put you over there, and I think that's where you are, it's like, he was like, all around. So you couldn't point someplace and say who's there. It's, when he, and the weird thing about it for me that was particularly unsettling was when he would speak sometimes, the voice wouldn't come from over there. The voice came from
all around.
like you're inside the chamber.
Whoa.
So for me, it wasn't like the way Anthony spoke about there being no one there. It was like, what's there isn't, what is isn't there, in a way that you can point to it as, you know,
Okay.
safely other than you in some way.
Okay, so this state I'm speaking of here is preliminary to that. Because what I'm speaking of here is that in the quincunx state, there's a profound disunity of the self to the point where, I don't even know to the point where. So,
You know, Lenny, I really like this one.
you like this one?
Yeah.
Well, you know what it says? It says that the bad parts of me,
Coexist.
yes, the
I
bad
know.
parts of me
That's why I
has
like
plenty
it.
to say. And don't tell me I have to be good.
That's why I
Forget
like
that
that
stuff,
one.
because I'll be good once the bad parts of me have had their say, and I can see what they've had to say.
Exactly. This one says to me, what this one says to me is, fuck the judgment.
That's
Let it go.
right. That's
Stop
right.
judging. Let it be messy and beautiful.
Let it be messy and beautiful, right? Let's hear what you have to say before I say your face is dirty.
Right. That's why I like this one.
Okay. That's great. Well, then maybe I did make the picture I meant to make. It did seem to me that if I try to make this a 40-pointed star, it didn't make sense. But if I put it in the 360, that somehow,
That's right. It has a container. It says there is that underneath everything, the whole is there. The whole and the fraction.
but here's a caution though. You can't tell somebody who's living in 3s and 4s to trust the creativity of their own faults.
Absolutely.
That's not true. So you get to a state where you can talk about this, but 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said anything like that to you.
But you know, on this, Lenny, if you look at it, the stars, more than any of the other ones, it's three-dimensional. These stars stand out and they say, we are the visual, we're the visible, we're what's seen. Don't worry that everything, that the 360 is behind it, holding and supporting it. You can't see it, you may not get it right now, it's very messy. You're in the 3 and 4, the 5 is there, that's what you see. There is that in this.
That star in the background, the black star, is the quincunx star.
Yep, that's,
The
and as
one
you
that goes
get,
to the edge?
Yep,
and and even behind that, the whole 360 is
the whole
like
360 there is
faded.
made out of quincunx stars.
It's faded. It's in the back, it's like
Yep.
holding,
Yep,
it's
Yep.
holding. the
that's
other.
all intentional, right?
There's something very.
Okay, anybody else want to say something about this?
Can you use the pointer? Can you use the light and show the 12, the 8, and the 5?
Well, it's easier with this because they're different, their
Yeah.
points are different heights.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're also, here's the 12, it's in black,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And it's out at the edge here. The 8 is in red, and there's the 8 right here. Okay? And the 5's in purple.
The 5 is bigger than the 8.
The 5 is bigger than the 8.
That's what I didn't see. I couldn't differentiate that.
The 8 is the intensity of activity. The 5 is the sense of self, and the quincunx is the understanding that self and other are all speaking from the soul.
Do that again.
The 8 is the intensity of activity. The 5 is a sense of self, and the quincunx is the understanding that self and other are both speaking from the soul. The quincunx is the dissolving of the sense that it's so important how different I am from you. When you speak, it could be me speaking. So this dissolving of the sense of self is what makes it possible that, what I said in that original paper, that the object can be seen dying. Because the self who was watching the object at one speed disappears, and now the self is watching the object slow down, and that the self disappears, and now the self is watching the object slow down again, and that self disappears, and there's no attempt to retain the self from the original speed of the object. It's allowed to gradually die. It's allowed to gradually evaporate, gradually settle into a different one state after another, because I'm allowing that I keep settling into one state after another. If I have the habitual Lenny, I won't be able to see an object dying.
So the dissolving is the dissolving of the distinction of self and other.
Right. Right. And it actually, what dissolves is how different I am from the object. There's a merging of the self and the object.
I have a question on this one. What do you mean in this context by faults?
Well, you have a notion that you have faults, yes?
I'm not sure how to take faults, I guess. I mean, there's things I know I'm not good at.
I just mean it in the way that you would commonly use it. And I don't want to ask you what your faults are, because nobody should be forced to talk about them. It's not, because if I'm thinking about my faults, I'm thinking about things to which there's a little shame attached.
So like negative self-judgments?
Yeah, well, just that there's a feeling of shame. There might not be a judgment attached to it, but there's a feeling of shame nevertheless. And I'm not going to talk about things at which there's a feeling of shame, but ordinarily in the 3s and 4s, if there's a feeling of shame, get out of here. I don't want to be with it. Whereas in this state, when you come into this quincunx state, the feeling of shame is just a feeling. Yes? And my faults might have a feeling of shame attached to them. You know, for example, here's one which is simple. Suppose I go out and get drunk. It's not a terrible feeling of shame, but it's not something that I'd say is one of my sterling qualities. I might, after being drunk, the next day I might know something I didn't know before, because the drunk pulled me into a silence I wasn't getting into, because there's a part of my mind, I didn't have any other way to shut it up except with whiskey. So that fault is very important. See what I'm saying? For example.
And you don't say that to somebody in the 3s and 4s.
You don't say that to somebody in the 3s and 4s. You don't tell them, go get drunk, it might be fine for you. You don't tell them that, because it's not true.
There are absolutes in 3s and 4s. You talk to people who, my experience there are rights and wrongs. And you avoid the wrongs and you do the rights, and then my experience when I talk to people who are exploring 5, that wrongs have just as much value as a manifester of important experiences, even if they in and of themselves might not be qualities that I'm glad I have.
You know, Lenny, this, I keep thinking, this looks like, remember the famous Young period from 1910 when he was doing his, he was being inundated, he thought, by the unconscious?
Yeah.
The Red Book,
That's what this looks like.
his drawings?
Well, that period where he kept, you know, the thing, I kept a gun by my nightstand, blah, blah.
Yeah, it really could be that kind of chaos.
Because it could seem like inundation, actually,
Right,
and it's hard to find the five, so to say,
right.
the stability, or any kind of
But
stability.
it's necessary that the quincunx be there in the picture. It's necessary that, well, you know, I talk about this experience I had. A couple of years ago, I fell down the stairs. And I say I fell down the stairs because that's a foolish way to talk, because I didn't fall down the stairs. If I had fallen down the stairs, I would have got hurt. What happened was, I felt myself falling down the stairs, and then something took over. And time slowed down, and I watched my arms reach out and grab the walls, and I watched my arms hold onto the walls and ease my body down onto the stairs, and watched myself go thumping down the stairs. And I think Janet ran over to see what the hell had happened. I was smiling at her because I had come back by that point. And to say I fell down the stairs, that's a complete lie. I have not got the skill to fall down the stairs. I'm no athlete, I'm nothing as far as physical skills. But what I seemed to be able to do was disappear and let the part of my body that knew what it was doing fall down the stairs, and then come back later and take credit for it. If I had been in 3s and 4s, I would have come back later and take credit for it. But, you know,
Or had a lot of broken bones.
well, or had a lot of broken bones, because if something didn't take over, if I had gotten in the way, I would have had a lot of broken bones, yeah. And this is the idea of the quincunx state, that I'm not always there. You could have a car accident and not be there, and come out of the accident and everything's fine, and what happened, I don't know. I think Michael Wakeoff had a car accident some years ago where he wound up outside the car he was driving and didn't know how he got outside. I mean,
It's a crack between them.
it's a what?
It's a crack between the worlds.
It's a crack, well, that's looking at it from the lower point of view, it's a crack between the worlds.
It's
But
the way you get to the.
But it's actually closer to the way things actually are, the way the self and the object actually interact, because the self and the object don't depend on each other in these higher states the way it seems to in 3 and 4s.
I'm just trying to get at it. So, Linda, like, I keep thinking of the cross, all the 3s and 4s, and I just feel, feeling so pinned. And I have this one quincunx in my chart, and it's like this magical place where I get unpinned from that cross. And that's maybe the only way that I'm thinking of it, and I don't know how I got unpinned. Most of the time I'm pretty fucking confused, but it was like, what happened, and just.
Well, Einstein is such a great example of the quincunx, and he's the one that said you can't solve a problem from the same level you ask it.
Yeah.
Einstein?
Yeah.
Same level you created it.
He created it, so, there has to be this crack in the ego to be able to invent something that hasn't been thought of. But, as Lenny said, until you can appreciate that, just, what you used to say, made you sick over and over and over.
Yeah,
Made you sick because you couldn't solve something, so
Well-
you got sick, and then you couldn't solve it.
Well,
Then
what
you got
happened-
sick again.
What happened was that I started exploring this, and I was going through the degrees of the Zodiac at that time. And I was going through Aquarius, and every day I would compare the degree of Aquarius with the corresponding degree of Virgo. And that's the quincunx.
It made you
And-
sick.
At about 23 or 24 degrees of Aquarius, I got sick from it. And it's quite common that for mathematicians who explore the infinite to get sick from it. And really 2 points at a quincunx are what Plotinus calls opposites. the opposition doesn't give you opposites. It's 2 points at a quincunx that gives you opposites because you can't get there from here. And the grasping of what's called the dyad in astrology is the grasp points of the quincunx. And you can't get both of them at the same time.
Hey Lenny,
Yeah.
I get the image of Christ on the cross in agony and speaking out to the Father, forgive them. There's a breakthrough in the midst of intense suffering that is a participation from a different way of relating. That, it's just something I wanted to bounce off of you.
More to say there?
No.
That's the 5 and the 4, because he himself is the 5.
The 4 is the,
The cross.
and it's the
Infusion.
it's the dismembering of the lower vehicles.
For the infusion from the 5 as he let go and was dying.
Yes.
Wow.
The blood and body. Any questions from new people? Visitors?
Let me just say one thing past the quincunx, and then we'll come back to this. Past the quincunx, when we get to the 9 is the we. This isn't a state of consciousness any longer. This is a state that's underlies, this is the state of intelligibility that underlies the world. When Plotinus says, these sensations are already intelligibles, he's speaking of not the sensations that we're aware of, and he says particularly that. He's speaking of a level of intelligibility that we all participate in. So, if I look at this cushion and say it's blue, and you agree it's blue, it's not that we're comparing the blue I see with the blue you see, it's we're comparing the intelligibility here that we both agree to. And we do live in a world of common intelligibility, and the 9 refers to that common intelligibility, which is why the 12 sits inside the 9. And the 12 sitting inside the 9 means the degrees of the zodiac are not the whole 360. The degrees of the zodiac are the zodiac, and when I get to the 9, I'm no longer talking about the 360 degrees. I'm in the 360 past the point where the degrees reach. So the degrees are the sum of human experience, and past human experience, there's something else. And that on the chart of the 360, this part that's past human experience is visible. It's not a state of consciousness, it's not a level of selfhood, it's the level of intelligibility that's beyond selfhood. And I can only draw a picture of it, and you could read what I say about it in my arguments for how I got there. And I don't have that much to say about it, because I'm just kind of at it, by tips of my fingers.
I can remember something that, in our discussion about that might be helpful from the Anthony perspective.
Could you please speak up a little bit?
Oh, sure, sorry.
It's hard for us.
I was talking about this with Lenny this winter, and I thought about Anthony's description of the 9th house prior to the form of the world in the 4th quadrant. And the way you're talking now, it's like the 360 comes in with the 4th quadrant, but there's an intelligibility in the, what he called the demiurgic intelligence that's informing all that. Do you remember that discussion?
Yep,
Does that still make sense to you?
I don't know. It doesn't not make sense, I just don't know how to get any closer to it. Okay, so
Did you have
Is
an
there a
image of
picture?
the 12 and the 9?
Yeah, it was the first image in the paper.
Can you go back to that?
David, he's still here.
I'm here.
Can you go back to that
I
picture?
will try. Let's see, that was in the, yes.
In the paper you're in now.
Yeah, just scroll.
Just scroll up.
In this paper?
Yep,
Yeah,
just
Just
scroll up.
scroll up, just scroll, oh,
There you go, that's right. Keep going all the way to the
way
top.
all the way to the top,
Front page.
that one.
Okay.
That's the 12 and the 9. And when I first discovered this picture, I experienced Tony's ghost yelling at me that I had to prove it. I really had to establish something because I was putting the degrees in context, and that's not something I could lightly do.
Can you draw the 9? I see the 12.
David, you have to go back to this thing and draw the movie of it for her.
Movie, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, is it visible there that?
That movie. Is this the one?
No. But if you go up to file and go, is that it? No, I don't think so. Go up to file and say edit recent. It'll open recent. Nope, that's not gonna help either.
We didn't show it, okay. So I'll go back on the stick.
It should be on page 1 in the stick.
Go back to the computer.
Okay, come on. Page 1.
That's it.
The
That's
top
what should
one.
be with Huntley. Okay, if you can show a movie of this one, that'll answer that question.
Now we're gonna need to make it smaller. There we go.
Less than
What
2
kind of
seconds.
speed do you think?
Oh, 1 second.
Where?
Start shift to that shift direction.
Well, they jump around.
Oh, there's the 12.
So there's 940s.
It's 49s.
40.
I see.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's a 9?
And if you looked at the point of that 12, you would see that the 12 is made up of lines that are from the 9-pointed stars underneath it. And that's what you'll see in every one of these drawings, that the interior star is actually made up of lines from the exterior stars. You can see it there. And what this is really showing is that the quincunx consciousness, which is the whole zodiac, and the whole zodiac, which is, as far as we can tell, that's the sum of human experience. And that's what we mean by putting the 360 degrees at such a high point in our study. We mean that the zodiac is the sum of human experience. And that human experience can be understood through the zodiac. And the 9 is more than that, and the 9 is the intelligibility of the cosmos that underlies human experience.
Do you remember what
process was in arriving at this? Did you start out thinking, well, what happens if I try 49s or?
No, I was looking at, it's a very difficult thing to describe because something in my mind got defeated by this. Because I was clinging to something about the Zodiac and the 9 came and defeated it. Because I was wrong about something. And the 9 told me I was wrong about it, and it was a very difficult thing for me. So it's very hard to describe because I'm not that guy who got defeated, he's gone. I did the best I could. Actually, when I first saw it, I couldn't believe it. I said, there has to be something wrong with this.
So what?
When I first saw that this picture was possible, I couldn't believe it. There has to be something wrong. I'm not gonna find the 9 as deeper than the 12. What the hell are you talking about, Lenny? And then I had to convince myself by drawing this picture and looking at it. And what really convinced me is I saw that the 9 had a 160-degree angle in it, and the 12 has a 150-degree angle in it. And I says, that has to be so, and then I could draw this picture. When I first saw it, I says, wow. I sent Linda a copy of the picture. I said, look at this, will you?
What does 160 mean to
It means it's closer to the, it's deeper, you know, just like in the
you?
12.
To the Zodiac.
It's deeper than the Zodiac. It's a deeper level of consciousness. And there are things that you can see here. I could look at the 165. I could look at the 162. There's other things in there that I can see that are hinting to me things about what the nature of the individual soul is, but I'm afraid to look at them. Because I don't know who I'd be. I don't know. They scare me because I mean, what is the individual soul? The individual soul aspires to be a planet. It aspires to be a star. It aspires to be a solar system. It's not it doesn't just aspire to be a sage. Its aspirations are beyond thinking. And what it could be the individual soul. And then I look in there and I see at a certain level and I says, you know, when I'm looking here, I'm looking at the flood of the doctrine. I'm looking at that amazing flood of grace that floods us and makes sure that somewhere, no matter in how dark an age it is, someone can breathe the truth. You know, these are poems that I could speak. I'm not comfortable with writing them down.
So what do you call this aspect?
What I call this aspect.
Yeah, 100 of
160.
160.
I call it what Plotinus speaks of as the we. 117. Look in 117. That's the only place I've got a clue. But if you read what I said in the paper, I'll tell you show you what it was that got me to think that the 9 was the we. But I'm like seriously holding on to this by my fingertips. I need some deeper intuition to tell me what to say and what language to say it in, because I'm no longer up to the quincunx. I can speak very comfortably about levels of selfhood and what's going on and what the psychology of it is. But after that, I'm no longer comfortable speaking that language, because I don't think there's an I and an object at the level of the 9. That's not what's going on. There's an intelligibility in which the I and object are found in what kind of state? I don't know. And for all I know, Porphyry didn't understand it either when he wrote it down. I mean, there are a lot of places in there where Porphyry seems over his head.
Porphyry?
The guy who took notes on Plotinus and wrote it down. Because he was just a student, you know, Plotinus didn't write down himself. Okay, what do you think, guys? We done?
Can we play this
You're working on it.
Say just one more time, the, image?
Want to play the movie?
Yeah, just,
David, please.
yeah, one more time.
You can speed it up.
It's okay,
I don't mind it, so.
I don't mind it.
Okay.
so-
Go ahead.
So when the sage has the option of maybe not incarnating again into a human body, but going to other realms, maybe it speaks to this.
I don't
And a
know.
conscious, you know.
That sage would have to be at some place where,
There isn't a,
there would, I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, because we're all poets here now. Yeah?
Because you're speaking to the universe.
Do they go in fives back and forth?
I don't know how I did this one. The other one,
You can see a 5 in the middle.
the other one, I did them in order. And in this one, I didn't do it in order. I was just perverse in the way I did it.
Lenny, how long have you been working on this paper?
How long have I been,
Yeah, for
I
like
don't
your
know,
whole-
Janet, how long I've been working on this?
3,000 years.
Yeah, for your whole lifetime.
I know that in my childhood, that it bothered me that there were 360 degrees in the circle.
Did it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my earliest mathematical thoughts. It bothered me. And I asked about it, and I was so irritated with the answers that I got from the teachers, you know. Oh, the Babylonians made a mistake. They thought there were 360 days in the year. It's like, get out of here, you assholes.
See, I told you.
But you said last time that you would awaken when you were at MIT in the middle of the night working out a problem.
Yeah, but that wasn't this. That was
It was
something else.
is it because the circle is infinite?
3,000 years. This whole thing is-
I don't know. You'd have to I mean, I've satisfied myself that it's the right number, but I couldn't tell you how I got there. I just got very satisfied with it.
I mean, it's beautiful, but it's,
Davey wrote a paper,
Random.
why 316, where he
It's-
did a lot of research on.
That was my thing.
That's nice, baby.
Oh, what? You did the Y, so what was the thing
There
that
is
you
no
did? So why 316?
Avery's was there is no why?
Well, the point is, was it in the Y 360 that you also postulated in other traditions, there are different numbers?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think, because if I look at the architecture of India, I see sevens all over the place. And I can't believe that 360 would be the right number for them. And Shiva dancing is a 7.
in statistics, everything that we have in healthcare, everything that medical profession decisions that they make is based on this random, artificial, statistical significance we've established at alpha equals 0.05. It doesn't mean anything, it's just that we all agree that would be the point at which something was significant versus if it's not that, it's not significant.
Yeah.
And a 360 is infinite. I mean, I'm sorry, if a circle is an infinite number of points, 360 is some artificial random.
Well, why don't we
number
say it's a
that we-
cultural constant,
That's
rather than
what- that's what I'm
artificial? It's a
saying.
cultural constant.
Yeah, artificial is
Because it's not as artificial as the standard deviation you're talking about. It's not an arbitrary decision.
I guess
It's
it
actually the
is-
way Greek culture grew, and that 360 is the right number.
I guess that is, for me, what I'm saying, but I mean, I hear what you're saying, that it isn't random because there is something spiritual about it. But it's tied to a culture,
Something
meaning that
demiurgic.
something could be.
Demiurgic. It's the way that Greek culture got built.
Mhm.
It has a certain beauty to it, just like if you look at the Parthenon, the golden ratio in the Parthenon, that's the pentagon. That's an expression of the pentagon. There's a certain way in which the beauty of Greek culture centers around the 5 and in some sense, the beauty of Hindu culture centers around the 7.
I don't mean to disrespect the beauty of it. I'm just saying that a circle is an infinite number of points, and that is of interest to me.
Well, that's human experience is 360 of them. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Lenny.
Mm.